Ask Americans why tensions with Iran exist. They'll say 1979. Ask Iranians the same question. They'll say 1953. Two completely different stories about the same relationship. Because in 1953, the United States helped remove a leader in Iran, and that single decision still shapes global tensions today. Before the tension, before the breakdown, relations between Iran and the United States were surprisingly neutral. In the early 20th century, the US was not seen as a colonial power in Iran. Unlike Britain or Russia, it had no direct territorial ambitions there. American educators, missionaries, and diplomats built relatively positive ties. But after World War II, Iran became strategically critical. Not just because of its location near the Soviet Union, but because of one defining factor: energy. At the time, Iran's oil industry was dominated by a British-controlled company, what we now know as BP. The imbalance was clear. Foreign powers profited heavily, while many Iranians saw limited benefit. This set the stage for a major shift. In 1951, Iran's Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, made a historic decision. He nationalized Iran's oil industry. For many Iranians, this was about sovereignty and economic independence. But for Western powers, it raised serious concerns. Britain imposed economic pressure. And in Washington, fears grew not just about oil, but about instability and possible Soviet influence during the Cold War. In 1953, those concerns turned into action. The United States and Britain carried out a covert operation, known as Operation Ajax, to remove Mossadegh from power. Led by CIA operative Kermit Roosevelt Jr., the operation used political influence, media campaigns, and local networks. Mossadegh was removed, and the monarchy under Mohammad Reza Pahlavi was strengthened. Declassified documents released decades later confirmed the extent of foreign involvement. For the United States, it was a strategic move during a global rivalry. But for many in Iran, it became something else entirely. A defining moment of external interference. After 1953, Iran and the United States entered a period of close alignment. The Shah positioned Iran as a key regional partner. With strong backing from Washington, he invested in modernization, military expansion, and economic growth. The US provided extensive support, financial, military, and even nuclear cooperation through programs like Atoms for Peace. On the surface, this looked like a strong alliance, but internally, tensions were growing. The Shah's governance became increasingly centralized. Political opposition was limited, and dissent was closely monitored by the state security apparatus. Rapid modernization also created social and economic gaps. Different segments of society, religious leaders, intellectuals, merchants, and working-class groups began to push back. By the late 1970s, pressure had built to a critical point. In 1979, that pressure turned into transformation. Mass protests led to the departure of the Shah. A new leadership emerged under Ruhollah Khomeini, establishing the Islamic Republic. This new system was built on a clear principle: reducing foreign influence, especially from the United States. Then came the event that permanently altered relations. In November 1979, a group of Iranian students took control of the US Embassy in Tehran. 52 American personnel were held for 444 days. In the United States, this was seen as a direct and unacceptable escalation. In Iran, many viewed it through a different lens, connected to past experiences, especially the events of 1953. From this point forward, diplomatic ties were severed, and the relationship entered a completely new phase. Since 1979, the relationship has not been defined by direct engagement, but by indirect pressure, regional competition, and strategic positioning. During the Iran-Iraq War, the United States supported Iraq in various ways, while also engaging in complex back-channel dealings with Iran. Over time, Iran developed a network of regional partnerships and aligned groups, extending its influence across parts of the Middle East. At the same time, the United States strengthened its alliances in the region. This created a layered system of competition, not always visible but constantly active. Another major point of tension emerged around nuclear development. Interestingly, The foundation of Iran's nuclear program dates back to earlier cooperation with the United States. But in later decades, concerns grew over its direction and potential. In 2015, a major diplomatic effort led to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Under this agreement, Iran limited aspects of its nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. However, in 2018, the United States withdrew from the deal. Since then, the situation has become more complex again, marked by pressure, responses, and stalled negotiations. Today, the relationship between Iran and the United States remains one of the most sensitive dynamics in global politics. There are no formal diplomatic ties. Communication happens indirectly through intermediaries and back channels. At the same time, regional developments, energy routes, and security concerns continue to influence decisions on both sides. Moments of tension still appear, but so do efforts to prevent escalation. When you step back, this is not a simple story of one moment or one decision. It is the result of multiple layers, historical actions, strategic interests, especially energy, and deeply rooted ideological differences. Rather than viewing this situation as a straightforward conflict between two nations, it can be understood as a complex interaction shaped by history, strategy, and perception. From one perspective, the United States and Iran's tensions are driven by ideology, energy interests, and past decisions that continue to influence trust. There is also an argument that the dynamics extend beyond just these two countries, where regional relationships, particularly involving Israel, add another layer of complexity that affects how this situation evolves on a global scale. In that sense, what we see today is not just a bilateral issue, but part of a broader system of interconnected interests.